Good morning. This is Martin Suarez on the first matrix. I will call this the matrix 1. It's a matrix about the body-mind system. Now, to understand the body-mind system, we have to understand what is a system. A group of elements that uses energy to work. So in every system, living or non-living systems, there is an input that we call energy and an output that we call work, right? So the two concepts here, thus work and energy, system also, system, work and energy, they probably make a circular definition, but this is what it means. Everything that works in nature uses energy, and that energy is taken from nature. So many thousands of years ago, probably 10,000, 8,000 years ago, the rishis in what is now known as India discovered this idea of seeing everything as an open system that is interacting with nature, taking energy from nature to do work, right? So they had this vision, and that vision came from meditation. Examples of sages that taught me this, Patanjali, a great yogi, Ashtavakra, a great sage from India. So I am not going to claim any copyright on this map. It was all written even before the English language or Latin or Greeks had ever written anything. So my recognition goes to the Vedic science. They are the ones that, or the Vedic scientists, are the ones that inspired me to understand nature with this approach. And of course, to understand the mind, the best thing is to meditate, right? What is meditation to the mind? We all know the research is showing us all the benefits of meditation, for wellness, for keeping our body healthy, to reduce stress, to reduce aging. I mean, these are all facts that science has already proven. But my point is that meditation is also a tool for learning. So what we're going to do is bring our awareness to a problem, to a fact about our lives. For example, the way we perceive nature through the senses, the possibilities that we have of working using our systems of actions, the systems that are outside us, we call them the macrosystems, and the systems that are working inside us, we call them the microsystems. We're going to bring our attention to this approach to learning, and then we're going to start building maps, conceptual maps, to understand nature. I like the way understand. It means literally to stand under nature. So the purpose of science is to transform the questions into wonder, from a question mark to an exclamation mark, from how to wow. This is the purpose of science, from curiosity to this state of wonder that I call a spiritual state in life. Wow, right? So the first thing that we have to understand is the fact that we are surrounded by elements. The rishis call these the bhutas, the mahabhutas, the elements of nature. And there are 5 elements in nature. This is quite obvious. We are sitting on earth, surrounded by the oceans, water, air, the atmosphere all around us. There is also this solar system, the solar sphere, we could call it, that is providing us the energy. And of course, beyond that and inside all of that, this is the omnipresent element. It is in between the atoms that make our body, and it is also in between the galaxies in this universe. 99.9% of our body and 99.9% of the universe is space. So space permeates all the other elements. So this is an ancient idea from all traditions. Now, looking at a body-mind system as an open system, we have 5 doors to the universe. We call them the systems of perception, right? And we know these doors are the sense of touch, taste, smell, sight, hear, right? But the idea is, where would I put each of these doors to the universe? I know that we can see the earth, we can see the water, we might be able to see the air because it's made of nitrogen, and of course we see the light coming from the sun. But the most probably essential element for sight to happen is light that comes from the sun. So yeah, this was Patanjali, and Ashtavakra gave us this clear idea that light and sight were connected to the element sun. That's quite obvious. Now we can discuss about which is the sense of perception that connects to the air element, let's say that. So we know we are surrounded by air, and it is a sense of touch. The sense of touch is what allows us to perceive that presence of air around our body, right? The homeostasis, the ability to control the body of the temperature, has to do with the skin. And the skin is the largest organ in the body. So the sense of touch we connected with the element air. If we think about the water element, it might be clear that the connection there is with a sense of taste. After all, we taste food that is mainly water, and we have this salivary glands, the tongue, the mouth, that is associated to the water element. If you don't believe me, do this. Yummy. So we have sight, touch, taste. We have to put into this matrix the sense of smell, and I would probably agree with Ashtavakra. I have to agree with Ashtavakra. This has resisted the test of time for many years. We smell molecules that are present on Earth, not in the air like many of us might think initially. The air does not smell. The pure air is just nitrogen. It has no smell, mainly nitrogen, oxygen. But the molecules that come from the earth, like the perfume from a flower, the smell from rotten organic matter, this sense of smell is associated to the element earth. Again, every sense is working together with each other to perceive the 5 elements all together. So here we have no choice but to put our ears with space. Does that make sense to us? This is interesting. The ears are connected directly, and it's the only sense of perception that is connected directly to the both hemispheres of the brain. So if we have our ears, sound waves produce vibrations inside our ears that are transmitted as electromagnetic waves to the brain. In fact, everything we hear is just a vibration of space. Sometimes you could say, no, you could argue, well, no, sound is a vibration of air. But the sound that we hear, for example, when we have our headphones on, is coming through electromagnetic waves in Spain. We're using Bluetooth, or we're using satellite TV to transform those vibrations into something that is audible to us, right? So that is the first way of understanding the connection between the 5 elements of nature and the 5 senses of perception, right? You could argue that it's arbitrary, but if you dig deeper into how we hear, how we touch, how we smell, you might probably end up agreeing with this ancient wisdom. So let's put these 5 doors of perception in the different in the different positions of the matrix, right? Smell, taste, touch, sight, hear. So this is the input that comes into our mind from the senses, right? So with this energy that comes in the form of light, in the form of sound, in the form of touch, heat, in the form of food, taste, with this energy in the form of gases that come from the earth, with this energy, we are able to do something, right? So that is the actions, 5 actions. And here we have to again look at our systems of actions. It is obvious that we have legs, and legs allows us to move, and we move on earth. No doubt about it. The legs connect us to the earth. Okay, we could skip this for a while, and let's talk about this one. We have our tongues. Our tongues make the air vibrate, right? So the sense of the action of communication requires air to transmit that sound. And that is what we do, if you think about it, when we talk. And that is energy output. Like, for instance, right now I'm working, I'm talking, I am creating tiny vibrations of vocal cords that create vibrations in my whole body. And those vibrations are transferred into somebody else's ears, right? And that goes into the brain. So talk, an action that requires energy. Sex, connected to fire. Sex is an action, right? It's an action that has to do with fire. This is hard to discuss. It's easy to accept the idea that sex and fire are connected. Thinking has to do with the nervous system, has to do with creating, electromagnetic waves. After all, any thought that comes through our brain and comes out of our brain is nothing but vibration of electrons, It's neurons transmitting these pulses, creating these patterns in the brain, and that is obviously connected to the space element. So that leaves us the hand and the water connected. You could say that this is arbitrary, but I have no difficulty in understanding, that this is probably of our systems of actions. Our hands are the most fluid. Look at the amount of things that we can do with our hands. We can write, draw, play music, kill, communicate. I mean, good and bad actions are always possible just by using the hands, right? So 5 systems of actions connected with the 5 elements of nature. Second row in the matrix. Now, let's look at how we are connected to the universe through systems that are inside our bodies. These are called microsystems, systems that are inside our bodies. Yes, we have skeleton, muscles. This is the mechanics of the body. This is what connects us to the earth, right? So when we study the muscles, the skeleton, we are looking at the structure of the body, built with atoms that come from the earth and giving us the mechanics of the body. I don't think there is any doubt here. Water and circulatory system, 92% of the blood is just water. In a way, the water that comes from the rain, it comes from the ocean, becomes part of our body, part of our plasma. It's what makes our cells. And this water is flowing through the system in the circulatory system. So no doubt about that. No doubt that the connection between the air and the body-mind system is through the respiratory system, the lungs, the air that is inside our body goes back out to the atmosphere. So we are all the time exchanging air with the atmosphere. Digestive, we could put here also reproductive system, systems that are inside our body that are connected to the fire element, the heat. In a way, we could see this system as a system that is transforming chemical energy into heat. Remember that our body requires a very, very constant temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. And that is why we eat. We eat to keep the fuel in our body. The fuel in our body is the food, right, that keeps the temperature constant. So the last system that is connected to the space element has to do with the nervous system. These are not the only systems that we study or we have inside the body. We have endocrine system, probably also here. I mean, I'm not saying that there are only 5 systems in the body, but any system that works inside the body could be seen connected to one or more of these elements in nature. Just to put things into a puzzle that makes sense. So these are the things that we study when we study the body. We study the nervous system and how it works, the electricity that is flowing through the body. That means electrons vibrating in space. Yeah, the transformation of chemical energy into heat in the body, and so on. So these are the 5 systems that we study at school in biology that are working inside our body. What happens outside our body? Nature also has systems, bigger systems. We call them macrosystems. And these are what we call cycles in science. So the biggest cycle of all is the universe. The universe, we could see the universe as a cycle that has a beginning and will have an end, right? And in that cycle, everything that exists is contained. So the biggest system of all is the universe, right? Easy to accept. Now, let's look at the sun. The sun is providing energy from fusion, and that energy, the plants transform it into matter. It's photosynthesis. And this cycle of photosynthesis is what connects, the earth, the air, and the light from the sun, A tree, a plant is just that, is the connection between matter. I mean, 80% of the mass of a tree, of a plant, comes from the air. And that happens because of the solar energy. Photosynthesis is that cycle in which pure energy from the sun is transformed into matter, into glucose, fruits that we eat. So that's why we say that we are made up of solar energy, because this is the first source of energy, right? And then when we eat food, we are getting direct energy stored from the sun. If we eat vegetables, it's first-hand energy from the sun. If we eat animals that eat vegetables, it's second-hand, and so on. These are the trophic levels, right? Another cycle in nature is the cycle with the nitrogen, which makes most of the air, right? 2% of the air is just nitrogen. And nitrogen cycles in nature. Yeah, so this is another, it goes into the soil, it fertilizes the soil, it grows into the trees, and then goes back into the atmosphere, right? So in this cycle, right, we are part of that cycle also. Human beings, like cows, are just part of the nitrogen cycle. Remember that nitrogen is an important atom in our body. It's in the proteins. Yeah? We have a lot of nitrogen inside our bodies, right? And we liberate that nitrogen also. The water cycle of water, evaporation, condensation, rain, water flows. We drink the water from a well or from a river, and then we send it back to the ocean. In our body, the water lasts 1 week. The blood changes every week. So we are just a link in this huge cycle of nature, macro cycle of nature. We see us being just part of this cycle. Our body is 70% water. So it is obvious that we are part of the water cycle and the carbon cycle. Yeah, organic matter decomposing, becoming petrol after billions of years or millions of years, and then that being burned back into the atmosphere and cycling in nature. 5 macrosystems of nature. And if we explore what physics is about, we could argue that physics has 5 big fields. A field that connects the Earth to mechanics, a field that explains everything that has to do with motion, bodies, mechanical energy, mechanical power. A field in hydraulics, liquids, hydrostatic, hydrodynamic, all this we study in physics. Gases, we study the gas laws, the kinetic theory of matter. We use the energy from the air to create aeolic power. Of course, heat is a topic, central topic in physics. Convection, conduction, radiation, the concept of temperature, the concept of specific heat capacitance, solar power. These are the concepts that we study in the physics unit, and everything that has to do with space, which is most of the physics and most of the universe. The ancients call it ether. So the Indians in fact call it akasha. The element space was akasha. The element fire was called tejo. Air was called vashu. This is Sanskrit. Water was called ap, prithvi. This is the words that the ancients used to describe the 5 elements of nature. To honor them, I say these are the English versions of those ideas. So electromagnetism, astrophysics, nuclear physics, quantum physics, all these topics in physics are connected to space element. So when we look at the matrix, it's just a web of concepts, a conceptual map, where we have all the actions, smell, taste, touch, sight, hear, connected to all the elements of nature, right? Actions, microsystems, macrosystems, fields in physics. It looks like an arbitrary puzzle, but I've been doing this in many places with different ages, different levels of understanding of science, and what was interesting is to discover that it was within our intuitive knowledge to accept these ideas. So when we design a syllabus like the IGCSE syllabus, these are the units that we cover. This is B4 for the syllabus that we're covering in IGCSE, P1, P2, B4, B5, B2, P5, P6, P3. So these are the units that we study in IGCSE, right? Just to see the connection between this conceptual map and the syllabus. Normally, when we learn physics at school, we just learn 1 unit on mechanics, and then we try to understand the laws of mechanics, and then we move into hydraulics or gases or heat or electromagnetism, but we never see the connection between this. So the purpose of this series of videos is to keep a view on this big picture. This is the big picture of science. So we have to come back to this matrix 1 to remember, when we get lost into the laws of electromagnetism, remember what we are looking at. What are we learning? Okay? So an exercise is that I leave you to do in your iPads or on a piece of paper is sit down or with a blank piece of paper, close your eyes, bring your attention to the way you perceive nature, meditate on the 5 senses of perception for a few minutes, and try to see where would you connect each of the senses of perception. Where would you connect each of the systems of action? Where would you put the digestive, circulatory, nervous system, any system that is inside our body? This is a puzzle. And if you complete this puzzle, you are on track to stand under nature. That means you are going to transform this question, how do things work, into this phase. Wow. Nature is amazing, and it is amazing because it makes sense.